Thank you for auditing Professor Skye's Record Review, the only first listen new music review show hosted by a French professor in a blue linen shirt. Today I'm going to be reviewing the album by Holy Hive called Float Back to You. And I think you might be wrong if you think you know why this is a great album. You might think that it's a great album because the band has a cool and weird name, Holy Hive. It sounds like Robin discovered a wasp's nest. Holy Hive, Batman! You might think it's great because of its song production. Very consistently produced songs, soft 70s feel. Extremely well produced, extremely well recorded. It goes between a sort of glassy clarity and a kind of gauzy fuzziness, and it does it very, very well. I think the cover does a good job of illustrating the feeling of the album. You might think that's why this is a great album, because this cover does such a good job of expressing the contents. The way you can make out the shapes and the colors, and it seems totally logical, and it feels soft and comforting, but there's just a little some intrigue as to where do these holes come from? What is this object? What does it mean? What does it mean to float back to you? You might think this album is great because the singer sings almost exclusively in falsetto or in very high register, yet somehow, and I don't know how he does this, he does not drive you crazy. You listen to the album and you enjoy it the whole way through. There's just enough variation. Falsetto singers is a dicey, dicey project. I mean, this album feels very soulful, right? Feels a lot like a good 70s soul album. But I mean, even like, have you ever listened to an entire Curtis Mayfield album? I own many. I love Curtis Mayfield. But at a certain point, you're like, all right, can you sing a little lower? We don't get that from this album. You might think that's why it's a great album. If I had one complaint about it, it would be that the lyrics are often lost due to the high register of the voice. When you're singing up here, sometimes it's more like an instrument and less like a conveyance of words. That also sounds like my Julia Child impersonation. Then we caught the celery. But that's my one regret, because I've only listened to this album maybe 4 times, and I didn't fully get all the lyrics. I should say this album is good enough that my wife, the Dr. Mrs. Payne, absolutely loves it. And she's like, would you please order this on Bandcamp? Because usually when I review an album, I then don't listen to it again until, later in the year. But she's like, I want to keep listening to Holy Hive. That's how good this is. But it's not because of the singing, and it's not because of the great songwriting. It's not even because of the astoundingly good bass. The one thing about this album that puts it above so many others is the musicianship is correct. It is never flashy, but it is always correct. And the bass player is playing bass lines that you don't go, oh, sick, bro, that slaps. But you are absolutely astounded by the taste of this album. That could be it. You might think that the reason this album is so great is that it's so goddamn tasteful. One of the greatest examples of why it's tasteful is the fact that every song has at least one surprise instrument. So, it's drums, bass, guitar, voice. But they bring in other instruments, like flutes, like horns at all different registers. Can you guess another instrument that they bring in? The harp, okay? But they do it tastefully. It never feels like, how do we make this song interesting? I don't know. Have you tried a flugelhorn? Like, they choose it very, very well. That is not why this is a great album either. The reason this is a great album, I believe, is because it is produced by a drummer. The drummer produces every track on this album. And when you understand that, I think you are able to get the key as to what makes this so great. Now, I am a drummer myself. I'm not going to play for you, but I did bring a drumstick, and only real drummers can do that with drumsticks. I got a lot of props today. School's out. I got time. But what I mean is that his drumming is so good. His drum set is recorded so well. It sounds like it's a drum set from the 1970s. Almost every beat, and I think they should do this, feels like you could take out the rest of the instruments and just have it be the best breakbeat album. But he doesn't play for show. Much like the bass player, he doesn't play for flash. He just plays drum beats that as a drummer and as a lover of good music, I just go, God damn, that's a good drum beat. And they're drum beats I could play, and I am a very mediocre drummer, okay? I could play them, but I didn't. It's this choice. It's the taste throughout the entire album, and the fact that the drums propel the whole thing. Seriously, it is amazing. Listen to this album and really focus on the drums. As much as drums can be lyrical, the drums are lyrical on this. I'm very excited. I was actually going to record tomorrow, but I am just so excited to talk about this album. So that is why Holy Hive, Float Back to You is a great album. Now I'm going to go track by track in my Pink Citroën and tell you about the different tracks. Every track is great, except for one, which is good. Two, which are good, I'd say. But in general, it's a very, very solid album. And especially if what you like is the kind of atmosphere it can set. That glassy and gauzy feel. It opens up with a track called Broom. In this, the special instrument is the horn section after the chorus. They use horns extremely well. And this track introduces the entire aesthetic of the album quite well, with a very solid drum beat, great bass playing, and the falsetto singing, which doesn't drive you crazy or make a souffle. The next track is Hypnosis, which is the worst track on the album, I think. Maybe it's because it has a funk style guitar, like that style guitar. It's not that great. The lyrics sounded interesting, like being about maybe hypnotized when you drive. I don't know. Has a nice descending chorus on the keyboard, and there's bongos. There's just not a lot of bongos. When I had a band, one of my best friends played bongos in the band because we wanted him to be included. He then went on to become a better drummer than me. Like I said, I am an astoundingly mediocre drummer. Then the next track, Blue Light, has a great chugging drum line, like the drums feel kind of like a train, like you know. And then the flute is the added element. And here again, the lyrics are interesting, and I wish I could make them out more. He seems to be singing about the illusion of control. You know, we're going to buy this album on vinyl. This is probably going to figure into my year-end list, and I'll tell you more about the lyrics as I hear them. If you are a Holy Hive fan, do you have this problem as well, where you really appreciate the singer's voice, but you just wish you could just pick out more of the lyrics? Coming up next is one of the two stamps on the album, Oh, I Miss Her So. You know how sometimes you listen to music in a certain place at a certain time, and that song becomes the soundtrack of that time and place? It's like it's fixed right in that place. Well, Holy Hive, congratulations. You have written a song of me waiting for curbside pickup at Home Depot for a hose nozzle that we ordered a month ago, that they said was delivered, but actually wasn't delivered, but was on a truck and was on its way to see us. But they had 15 in stock, but they couldn't give us one because the one that was on the truck was the one that was for us, even though we already paid for it and we were supposed to pick it up a month ago. And how many people came out to speak to me in my car with their masks on and the window? 6 people came out to talk to us. We had the worst customer service, but the whole time, I'm sitting there with the Dr. Mrs. Payne, and I'm listening to this album, and I'm listening to this beautiful song, and it made the whole wait, now to me, happy. When I hear the song, Oh, I Miss Her So, I remember sitting there, frustrated as hell about that stupid nozzle for a hose, and I just think, oh my God, I remember when I first heard that song, and I was next to the person I love, and the drums were so good, and is that harp being used well in rock and roll music? It is. Turns out it's Mary Lattimore. I don't know who she is. I probably should. My daughter plays harp, but she plays harp in a way that really augments the music. Too often, exotic instruments like harp end up being like flair, like a little button. It says harp. But here, it's really integrated into the music so well. And it starts off and it's just the voices. It's just the voice and the harp and maybe I think a little bit of guitar. And then the drums come in. And I keep telling you about this drummer, but it's real. Like he knows when to hold himself back and when to come in. I think, so there's different kinds of people who love drummers and who love drums, right? And in one way you could say that like John Bonham, Moby Dick is the greatest moment of classic rock drums or whatever it is. For me, it's when Charlie Watts comes in on Wild Horses. Like the whole song, and it's just like, and he just starts playing, and it's the restraint of his drum beat, the restraint of his fills, everything about it completely matches the song perfectly. If you know what I'm talking about, the fill, the intro to Wild Horses by Charlie Watts by the Rolling Stones, I think you will get some of my excitement about this drummer and on this song. Just great. And when the horns and the flute come in, it's transcendently wonderful. It's just that good. It really is. It's so good. It's so good that when the assistant manager comes out and tells you that you'll have to come back next week, you're still happy. The next track is called Be Thou by My Side, Be Thou by My Side. No drums on this one. A tambourine. Not coincidentally, it's one of my least favorite songs. They do have a side that I don't love. And it's where they get a little bit, I would say, precious. A little bit Simon-y and Garfunkel-y. Like using lyrics, like using words like be thou by my side or beggar. You know, just like 19th century words. I would like it to be a little bit more grounded and not as affected lyrically when I hear it. Then the next track, the next track is the best track. I don't know. I said it was Oh I Miss Her So, but it might be the title track, Float Back to You. Cannot stress enough the beat that this guy makes. It's the kind of beat that even you, if you're not a drummer, could imitate. You could just sit there and listen, and it completely drives the song. But the whole time, there's just this really nice, thick atmosphere. Bass work, guitar work, it's all happening just right. And then at the end, again, these killer horns come in, and they're just beautiful. It's just so great. I love the songwriting style. I love the restraint. The next track, Didn't You Say? So I don't write scripts for these things. I write notes. And for some reason, I forgot to write anything about Didn't You Say. So I don't know. I assume it's a good track, but we're just going to skip that one, okay? I mean, I did the drum thing for you. Next track, Embers to Ash, has the best example of the glassy side, like very clear, piercing 70s horns. And then, very necessarily, we have Cynthia's Celebration, which is an instrumental track. If I were producing them, and I wouldn't do half as good of a job as the guy who did this, I'm sorry I don't know anybody's name. I just remember reading that the drummer produced everything. And then if you look at the production credits, it's his name. It's like Steinweiss or something like that maybe? I don't know. But here, like, having an instrumental break definitely helps because the band is so strong instrumentally. Maybe if they had another one in the first third, because this introduces the last third of the album, if they had one after the first third, it might help to even more alleviate some of the emotional stress of listening to falsetto for that long. But it's a great track, very rhythmically interesting. Red is the Rose starts off with kind of a trumpet clarion call, like going off to a march or something. And here we are again in their precious lyric mode. Red is the rose, clear is the water, come over the hills, my bonny Irish lass. I don't know. Lyrics like that annoy me. But so much rock and roll right now, especially indie rock and roll, is in this psychedelic mode where you just sort of vaguely talk about tripping or trippy stuff, and it's like it counts as good lyrics. I'm glad this isn't it. I'm glad this isn't some half-assed political statement. I'm glad it's not some thing about being a drunk. I'll forgive it. It suits the music well enough. I'll forgive it. And again, the rhythms on this song are just so interesting. And it really does still maintain in its 70s feeling. Like I say, no script, just notes. I happen to be looking at the cover. I get distracted while I talk. It's not weird. And I actually noticed that even the font that they use is consistent. You can't really tell, but that's New Century Gothic. That is a very 70s font. The same font they used on the nameplates for vintage Star Wars toys. So they really are going for this full-time aesthetic. And then we go to, actually, no, I'm just kidding. This is my favorite track. Oh, I Miss Her So, Float Back to You, and then this track, You Will Always Be by My Side Forever. I already got married. I can't redo a wedding song. But if I could, this might be one of them. Because You Will Always Be by My Side Forever is a wonderfully redundant line. Again, I wish I understood his lyrics more, but this was funny because I made the cereal for the kids. I'm a great chef. I made my cereal for my kids, and my son, who's a drummer, that's his drum set back there. I have an old crappy Tama Rockstar DX from 1992. He's got the DW, made in California, awesome drums. Anyways, so he comes down, and he's just sitting there on his phone, doing the teenager thing, looking at Instagram or whatever. I was like, hey Django, what member of the band do you think produced this band? Drummer. Like, he could just so tell because the drums are just so well produced. And they have this bit here where there's like, and again, seriously, Holy Hive, if you release this beat, said no copyright, and gave it to all the rap artists in the country, it would be Funky Drummer. You know, it would be the Amen break. Like, it's such a perfect beat for rapping. Anyways, after you think the song fades out and is done, this like bass, saxophone, some kind of really low horn comes in. And there are certain times in music where musicians make something and they make a moment and you just want to live inside that moment. This is that kind of moment. So I'm gonna play it for you. It's probably gonna go over 14 seconds, which means I'm going to get struck for copyright, which means if you don't pay for YouTube Premium, there's gonna be an ad on here. But don't feel bad. Holy Hive is going to get most of that money because I don't monetize. But I want you to listen to the way that the end of the vocals go, okay? So the end of his high singing goes, and then this pause, and then just these horns, because it's just, you're not gonna hear much better music this year. Right? Oh, and then the rest of his instruments come in, the guitar, the organ. Just shut up, Holy Hive. Shut up. I almost didn't review them because they're from Brooklyn, and I have this weird anti-Brooklyn stance for basically no reason at all. But I heard that. That is as good as music is getting right now. The last track, Sophia's Part. I assume Sophia is a piano player because the track is called Sophia's Part, and there's someone named Sophia listed in the musicians. And on this, you actually hear the singer's best range of vocals. And if I could make a suggestion to Holy Hive, work more in this realm of where you actually feel the singer's range, not just his ability to stay in the high end. So there you go. An extremely positive review for an extremely good and interesting band, and this is their first album, so I'm on the goddamn ground floor. I feel like every video I do is like, well, I've heard of this band, but I've never reviewed them before, and it turns out they're good. And everyone's like, yeah, Skye, Tame Impala's good, you dummy. But I'm telling you first, if you haven't already heard, Holy Hive Batman is a good band. All right, well, my kids have been quiet, the dogs have been quiet. This is just a wonderful, wonderful time to be alive. All right, until next time, there's the camera.